Hi, I'm Ben. If you've watched Paper and Ink, I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't, I hope you will. You know, the degree to which money affects and controls our lives is astounding. Yet most of us simply accept the necessity of it as a fact of life, like eating and sleeping. You gotta have money to live. You gotta work for it to get it, just as sure as the sun will rise in the morning. This is the system. You don't question it, you just do it. These are things we learn almost as soon as we burst forth from the womb. Well, about 30 years ago, I started to examine this thing we call money. It was Thanksgiving Day. I was enjoying a typical bountiful dinner with my family at my sister's house when I asked one of my nephews, who was about 10 years old at the time, if he had decided what he was going to do when he grew up. To my surprise, he said he was going to be an orthodontist, and he said it without hesitation, as if he had already put a great deal of thought into this. Since no one in the family was an orthodontist, I asked him, "Why an orthodontist?" And he replied, "'Cause they make a lot of money." I asked him if he knew anything about teeth, and he said, "No." Then I asked him if he cared to know anything about teeth, to which he responded, "I guess I'm going to have to." Everyone got a good laugh out of it, but over the years, I replayed that little moment in my mind many times and began to wonder how many people choose a career path based on how much money they think they'll make and how such a major decision in a person's life is influenced by money. If a mechanic tells me my engine needs to be overhauled, I don't want to have to wonder if it really does or if the guy just wants to take his family to Hawaii. Do we work because work needs to be done and this is our contribution to society? Or do we work for a paycheck? The Thanksgiving Day discussion is just one of many times over the years that have led me to ponder the pros and cons of money and the role it plays in our lives. I've been a musician for as long as I can remember. I've taught private music lessons most of my life, and on one occasion several years ago, it was time for a mom to pay for her child's lessons. I've always been sort of uncomfortable reminding people to pay me, so in order to lighten the situation, I said, "Wouldn't it be great if there was no such thing as money and we all just took care of each other?" Now, I have no idea where that came from. It wasn't even a real question, just something to ease the discomfort of reminding her to pay. I didn't really even hear what I had said. And we both kind of chuckled and she looked at me a little weird, but over the following weeks and months, I found myself asking that question again and again. Eventually, I heard it and began asking myself, what would the world be like without money? My first answer was pretty much what everyone else thinks. That's such a ridiculous idea, it's not even worth wasting mental energy on. But for some reason, it wouldn't leave me alone. So I began exploring the notion in my mind as little more than a mental exercise. Anyone I talked to about it just laughed and said, "You can't be serious." So I slowly stopped talking to people about it, but continued to turn the idea over in my mind and study it from every angle I could think of. I spent a significant amount of time on the internet looking for someone who might have the same idea. Surely I wasn't the only one on the planet who was thinking about this. I found lots of people and organizations complaining about what a mess the world is, and they all have ideas of how to improve them, but they wanted to do it while keeping the monetary system intact. Eventually, I ran across the Venus Project website, which led me to the Zeitgeist movement, and those two groups were, at the time, partnered. Finally, I'd found people who thought like I did, and that helped me to believe that I wasn't going insane after all. I didn't, and still don't, agree with everything they stand for, but I was all over the parts about getting rid of money. From reading the information on the sites and watching the movies, I learned a great deal about how the monetary system works and how money comes into being, and something that I had not yet thought of, a resource-based economy, which is kind of a natural outgrowth of life without a monetary system. I encourage you to check out these two sites, Study the information, watch the movies, and you'll be enlightened by the ideas presented. Anyway, by this time I was working on a graduate degree in film and video. I'm a strong believer in lifetime learning, and decided to take a class in feature screenwriting. Obviously, I had to come up with a topic for my screenplay, so I said to myself, okay, it's time to put this crazy no money notion out there. Now, the course didn't require that the screenplay be made into a movie, but by the time I was about halfway done with the class, I decided to produce it. And in keeping with the spirit of the theme, I was going to produce it for no money. The actors and locations were gracious enough not to charge me, and I already had a decent camera, some lights, sound equipment, and editing software, so off I went. Well, I didn't quite get it done for no money. After feeding people and renting the sheriff's car and the deputies' costumes, I had about $1,500 into it. Not free, but in the world of filmmaking, really, really inexpensive. It was a lot of work and a lot of fun and a tremendous learning experience. But most of all, putting it online for free gives me the opportunity to share my ideas with whoever will listen, and maybe, just maybe, I can somehow contribute to making the world a better place. I want everyone to see the movie, but I don't want anyone to pay to see the movie. Occupy Wall Street began when I was about halfway through shooting and grew like wildfire into a global phenomenon. So it's clear to me that people all over the world are fed up with the way things are. We're fed up with hunger, poverty, constant war, economic inequality, and the list just keeps going. And we're tired of waiting for people in power to do something about them. For most of these things, money is a stumbling block. Well, we can't solve this problem over here because we're using the money to work on this problem over there. People are suffering and dying all over the world. The way I look at it is, if money's the thing standing in the way of helping people, for God's sake, get rid of the stuff. Find another way to solve problems that doesn't require money. In the upcoming weeks and months, I'll be uploading several videos and sharing my thought about a world without money and how to possibly achieve it. I'm going to attempt to convince you that getting rid of money is not only possible, it's actually a good idea. Whether or not I'm successful, I welcome your comments, questions, and criticisms. I've got a lot of ideas, but certainly don't have all the answers. I hope you'll visit this site often and join in the conversation, and together, we just might create a better world. Before we get started though, you're probably wondering, who is this guy and why should I pay any attention to what he has to say? I'll keep the answer brief so as not to bore you to tears. My name is Ben Champion. I was born in 1952 in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've lived in and around Atlanta ever since. I don't hold a terminal degree in anything, so I can't put letters after my name. I've never written a book, held political office, or won a Nobel Prize. I'm neither rich nor famous, not even close. In short, I have none of the credentials or characteristics that someone you might want to listen to typically has. I do hold 2 master's degrees, one in music and the other in film, but I'm not going to talk about either of those things. I'm going to talk about money and why I think we should rid ourselves of it. I know it's pretty weird. Also, I'm a Christian. Now don't worry, I'm not going to browbeat you with Bible verses. Still, I think it's important that you know that about me because who I am is influenced by my faith and my beliefs. So, to sum it up, maybe you shouldn't pay attention to what I have to say. On the other hand, if you do decide to listen, perhaps you'll consider the notion of a world without money, and it won't seem quite as ridiculous as it probably does right now. So, if you're still watching, here we go. Oh, and by the way, my nephew never became an orthodontist.